I don't think AI is going to replace humans as much as it's going to replace humans who don't upgrade their own operating system, which is our mind. I believe everyone listening that there's a version of yourself that's patiently waiting. So what's the goal? The goal is we show up every single day, even during difficult times, until we're introduced to that person. Change can be scary. It's the unknown, right? Or growth could be hard. But nothing is as scary and hard as being stuck somewhere that you don't belong. The whole idea where if you just do the easy things in life, then life gets hard. But if you do the hard things in life, then life tends to get a little bit easier because you're stronger because of it. And it's a choice. It's hard to create a positive life with a negative mind. And you want to be realistic also as well. But since everything is coming from those thoughts and those questions that we're asking, because that question determines our focus and that becomes our reality.
I think it all comes down to making a commitment to yourself. Pick your hard, make a commitment to yourself, and then honor that commitment.
Things are difficult for one of two reasons. You leave your comfort zone or you stay in your comfort zone. And I would always choose to a point where you're bending, but you're not breaking.
Welcome to the Genius Life. How you doing?
Oh, so good to be here.
So good to have you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
I forget what number appearances is for you, but you're always a wealth of knowledge. My audience loves you, and you put such good stuff out into the world, such important stuff. So thank you for doing what you do.
No, likewise. We love having you on our podcast. You've been on it quite a few times.
Love it, brother.
It's genius.
It is genius. Well, I'm excited to dive into a new, I know this is a new topic for you, but it's not a new topic, I think, in the grander scheme of things, AI and how to build cognitive antifragility. Yeah. This is a topic that you brought to me. You were like, can we talk about this? I think this is really important. And I couldn't agree more. You know, AI is sort of, there's almost like two ways to approach the current AI issue. There's like this very dystopian take on what's going on, but there's also this very empowering take. Yeah. Like in the way that AI is, you know, helping many users, I think, to help their own inner genius flourish. I know that I use it on a regular basis for pretty much everything, from analyzing my own health labs to creating copy to better, you know, gaining a greater grasp of scientific literacy. So I think it's really powerful, but of course there's also a dark side, as there is with everything. But yeah, for people listening who are, you know, feeling a bit unsettled by everything, I think antifragility is a great place to start. How do we build antifragility? Why don't we start with defining it, and then maybe you can share how that's different from, I don't know, resilience.
So cognitive resilience, the way I'm looking at it functionally, is our ability to deal with stress and bounce back to baseline. Anti-fragility when it comes to cognitive health and performance, I feel like it's not just bouncing back, but it's bouncing forward. It's like you actually grew from it. And so I think right now in the world, the Google AI expert recently said that, what was it? That the most important skill to master in the age of AI, the most critical skill, is learning how to learn. In a world where I believe we have to adapt. We have to be able to adapt quickly. We have to be able to learn, to be able to unlearn, to be able to relearn things based on new information. Be able to, the things we teach, be able to absorb that information faster, learn faster, be able to read it faster, be able to remember key ideas and points, be also equally enthused to apply that information. You know, I feel like what makes us humans our ability to see different perspectives, to be able to create, to be able to ask better questions, you know, prompts also as well, to be able to think, have a level of empathy when we're sharing that information also as well. So when it comes to fragility, I'm thinking about like the things you talk about on the podcast, things like hormetic responses. Kind of interesting, right? Whether it's temperature, where we acclimate and we get stronger, or maybe it's exercise, maybe it's some form of intermittent fasting. There's some kind of change, and then we adapt and get stronger as we go. And when it comes to psychology, there's this. We hear a lot about post-traumatic stress. We don't hear on the other side, which I would think is an element of anti-fragility, is post-traumatic growth. People have been through difficult situations that they wouldn't wish upon anybody, but they wouldn't change it for themselves, because through that experience, that difficulty, that adversity, they got stronger. They found a trait, a strength, a mission, a purpose. There was some kind of gift in there. So there's definitely a mindset component to anti-fragility. and I know we're speaking more and more on the cognitive side. So I think hormesis is one element, like neuroplasticity, same thing, right? You get some kind of stimulus, some kind of novelty, and then you adapt and you grow, and you're smarter, stronger because of it. So I think it's well placed in nature, even our immune system, right? Children that are exposed to more bacteria, let's say, they get their immune system is enhanced. And so I feel like with the stimulus that's out there, the stressor, we could grow stronger. And I think now is especially important. When the amounts of information through AI, through change, people losing their job, the stressors in the world, that we need to do this kind of like this mental upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. I love you brought up hormesis. That kind of aligns with what I wrote about in my second book, The Genius Life, the concept of cross adaptation, where it might not intuitively seem to be the case, but when we expose our bodies to stressors, when we exercise, when we do all of the body strengthening activities that we talk about ad nauseum on this podcast, they actually have the side benefit of strengthening your psyche, of strengthening your mind. And it's like this cross adaptation that occurs. You wouldn't necessarily think of it because it's not necessarily mental work that you're doing. It's physical work. It's work in the gym. It's work in the sauna and the cold plunge, whatever. But yeah, it also has this like happy side effect of making you more cognitively anti-fragile as well.
I think so. And it's like, and also part of it, I feel like leading up to it is having cognitive flexibility. It's like cognitive flexibility. It's like mental parkour, where you could just be just like physical flexibility. You're more nimble, you're more pliable, less susceptible to injury. And so cognitive flexibility is where you could shift perspectives, different points of views. You could problem solve. You could make better decisions. And so it's doing these mental kind of, it's like mental CrossFit almost, where you're exercising different parts of your brain to be more valuable, both for yourself and also with society. And so, but yeah, absolutely. But cognitive flexibility is one of those things where you could build it out. It's like, have you ever thought about, is it more important to be a generalist or a specialist?
It's so funny you ask that, because we just had Susie Welch on the show, who talks about how there are benefits to being a generalist, there are benefits to being a specialist. But if you try to fit a specialist into a generalist role, whether it's job or whatever, that person's going to suffer.
Yeah, I don't think I want necessarily I want my brain surgeon to be a specialist.
Yeah.
that would be important. It's kind of like that T. Like if you think about a T, like the going horizontal, the top of the T, left and right, that's a generalist, right? There's lots of different general information ideas, and going down is the depth, is the specialist. And I think you could be integrated like that, because I think ultimately, whether it's a general or specialist, you could be this adapting integrator, because it makes you more valuable. And they do this thing where they see these geniuses and these Nobel laureates, and they're like 22 times more likely to have artistic hobbies, creative pursuits. There's a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution, where it talks about innovation, where a lot of innovation comes from people outside of the industry, because it takes somebody from the outside to look in to have a different perspective, that they didn't have the traditional training of that discipline. So they don't have a learned helplessness around certain ideas of what's possible. And then they also ask different questions, like why today, if we're going to create a car, why wouldn't you make it this way, or something like that. So I think there's, we live in the age of I feel like the mind, and I think adaptation is a real superpower for all of us. It's just we're not really taught how to use it, right? There are not a lot of classes on this subject.
Definitely not. I was having this conversation actually with a a personal trainer recently in Vegas who said something really interesting that, he was kind of, I mean, he's a fitness expert. And so he was kind of in his own way describing to me the difference between like training for strength versus training for size, like the difference in how powerlifters versus bodybuilders might train. And I'm not a power lifter, so I mean, if any are listening to this and I'm speaking out of turn, I'm sure they'll let me know. But it's like when training for strength, you tend to do the same like big compound movements. Like if you're training to build your bench press, you just do your bench press. You bench press over and over again. But if you're training for size, you want to hit as many different angles as possible. So you'll see bodybuilders in the gym, working the same muscles from like a bajillion different angles and like leverage points and whatever, cables and then free weights and then, or like dumbbells and then barbells. So I wonder if there's like I wonder if that's analogous to building cognitive flexibility that maybe sounds, related to you as an expert on this topic.
I with neuroplasticity, right? How we make the phenomenon where we could make new neural pathways as we age, at every age and stage in life. It requires two things. It requires novelty, just like building physical muscles. You have to give it some kind of stimulus, and then nutrition. You have to be able to feed it, and with all the great genius foods that you talk about, it's because what you nourish flourishes. I do believe there's a way of exercising different parts of our brain, and they can be a physical component, certainly for sure. But most of us also, I mean, they say the average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day. The challenge is 95% of those.
Way fewer.
We're giving some people more credit than others. But 95% of the thoughts usually are the same thoughts we had yesterday and the day before that. So how are we going to create this new life, right? This genius life or this limitless life if we're having the same thoughts repeatedly? Because all those thoughts lead to certain feelings, lead to certain behaviors, which lead to certain kind of outcomes. So I do believe like that you change your brain, you change your thoughts, you change your life accordingly. But it requires stimulus. Even getting out of the groove of the things that we do, like you can do this neuro stacking almost, where you could combine certain things without taking more time. Let's say you're waiting for coffee to brew, you could do your air squats, right? Or part of my morning routine is I want to get the elements into my life. I read that a lot of ancient cultures, Babylonians, ancient Greeks, they believe everything was made up like four elements: air, water, fire, earth. And so I'm just thinking, for me, I don't have to do all this biohacking, especially when I'm traveling. I could just go outside and get grounded, right? That's something but I could stack on top of it while I'm getting grounded. I could get sunlight to help reset my circadian rhythm. So it'll be like a neuro stack. Or I could do some breathing and get the air while I'm doing some visualization also as well. So I could stack that together in terms of like what my outcome is for that day. I can mentally rehearse the wins and work backwards and make that my focus point. I could hydrate and get the water. So I got the sunlight, which is the fire, the ground, which is the earth. I got the do some breathing exercises, get the air, and then hydrate, because when you don't hydrate, your brain is mostly water, and a lot of us, when we sleep, we could lose up to a pound of water through respiration and perspiration. So you could stack those different things, and you're going for a walk. You could be also doing social things. You could be connecting with your team or your family on phone calls, which we know is very important also as well for the brain, is human connection.
Yeah, all that stuff is really important. When it comes to actually utilizing AI itself, which again is something that I use it not just every day, but multiple times a day. How do we use it to actually enhance our intelligence, our cognition, as opposed to just outsourcing it completely to AI?
Yeah, there was this MIT study that really went viral a few months ago, where they took 50 some odd students, and they had some work on ChatGPT to create kind of like SAT style essays. Another used Google search, and another one didn't use any technology. They wrote, and they did scans of their brain to see the neural activity. And what they found, and I'm summarizing this, right? But those who relied solely on ChatGPT had the least amount of engagement and activity in those brain regions. They also forgot a huge amount, the most out of the groups in terms of what was produced, because they had no personal. And then a lot of stuff came out a little bit Time Magazine's called it like soulless, but it is improving without a doubt. But it was what I talk about in Limitless. My book is I termed this years ago called digital deduction, the high reliance on technology to do the thinking for us. Like we've heard of digital dementia, where technology is remembering things, your schedules, your to-dos, phone numbers, right? So your brain is like a muscle. It's like it's an organ, but it responds like a muscle where it's use it or lose it. But if technology is doing the heavy lifting for you, you don't have to think or even remember things. And so I love technology. I'm very optimistic about it. I use it as a tool. But remember, technology is a tool for us to use. But if technology is using us, then we become the tool, right? And that's not the goal. So I feel like technology is like fire. Fire is an early form of technology, probably the earliest one. And it's not good or bad. Fire could cook your food, or it could burn down your home. It's just how it's applied. We use our whole team, uses AI like most people do for various things, especially for learning, accelerate learning. Everything we talk about, the principles and processes of memory improvement, speed reading, accelerated learning, focus, AI could personalize things for you. It could personalize your learning, just like there's personalized medicine or some kind of personalized workout based on your body type or your specific goals. It could help you review what you know, what you don't know. It could do spaced repetition, where it could share the information and test you through the recall process, which helps you to remember also as well. And also it could share that information in the preferred style that you like to be able to learn it. For our podcast, sometimes if I'm interviewing an expert, I don't get their book in time, and I don't like reading on screens. I'm just, I don't need another excuse to be on a device. But it could summarize, key points. It could help me remember it. That we teach memory palace technique, and I could say, hey, mind map this for me, like whole brain note taking, or I could say create a memory palace. But I still want to do the work, right? And that's the thing. I don't think AI is going to replace humans as much as it's going to replace humans. I mean, people say it's going to replace humans who don't use AI, but I think it's going to replace humans who don't upgrade their own operating system to be able to keep up with the evolution of external technology when you have this technology between your ears, which has created all the technology in the world.
Yeah. What did you say before? A memory palace?
A memory palace. Yeah.
What is that?
I think on a previous episode we used things like my office or the human body to memorize some of the brain foods, or remember the 10 keys for a limitless brain. It's where you take areas, locations. So 2,500 years ago, they used this technique, orders, to memorize poetry or speeches without notes. And how they would do it is we store information through time and space in our minds, right? And so you pick a location that you're very familiar with, maybe your home or your office, your school, the mall, your body. And then what you do is you take the information that you want to remember. Maybe it's a sales script, maybe it's you're studying for an exam, maybe it's some tenets in your next book, or a speech that you want to give at work. And then you turn those things into pictures, because we tend to remember things that we see, just like we tend to remember faces better than we do things we hear, like a name. And then you put that image in that place. So let's say you want to remember some of Genius Foods. Let's say avocados are very important. You can just put it on the top of your head. Imagine you're using it as a scalp conditioner. You want to talk about the benefits of blueberries and how neuroprotective, and you can imagine blueberries coming out of your nose, right? Or something silly like that. Or let's say broccoli and the sulforaphane. Imagine broccoli in your teeth, or olive oil, cleaning your ears with olive oil, something simple like that. And I would imagine even 20 minutes later, people could still see and feel that. And you could do the same thing with your living room. You could take key points. You have to remember something at work, or so your to-do list. You're in the shower. You have to think of all these things you need to do. You put something in your microwave, or you put something on your stovetop in your refrigerator. And it's kind of a way of encoding this information, so you don't have to use repetition, because that's how most people remember something. They repeat the name over and over again, or the number over and over again. And the challenge with repetition, like frequency, right? Just like to build a muscle, there's frequency, duration, or intensity, right? These are the factors, just like with sales or marketing. Frequency, you could repeat a sales message or run lots of ads. Duration, a longer ad. Or intensity, something be so viral and emotionally that you just buy, right? But same thing with your body. You could do frequency, lots of reps. You could duration, a longer workout. Or you could really supercharge the intensity and get similar results. The benefit of intensity as opposed to frequency and duration, frequency and duration take time. And so if you could use more intensity, like more of your senses, more of your nervous system remember something, you don't have to repeat it. You don't have to study for hours. You don't have to repeat it over and over again. And that's kind of like a little mental shortcut.
It's so effective. I mean, I remember, using avocado as a hair conditioner, broccoli in your teeth, blueberries coming out of your nose, using olive oil to clean your ears. Right. It's super effective.
Eggs in your throat, like, the choline eggs is very, very, very powerful. Or you can imagine salmon necklace, for your omega-3 or DHAs. You can imagine turmeric on your fingers, dark chocolate on your bottom, whatever. Like it just comes, you can't forget it. And so, and these are the kind of things you could do to be more mentally resilient, right? Because part of it is having the process of how to do certain things, but also that's the software, how to remember names, how to focus, how to read faster, the things that we teach. But also you have to take care of the hardware, which is the brain itself. And so I feel like anti-fragility, going back to it, is just that with challenge comes change. But how are we testing ourselves? Like the whole idea where if you just do the easy things in life, then life gets hard, right? But if you do the hard things in life, then life tends to get a little bit easier because you're stronger because of it. And it's a choice. There's a quote in Limitless that says, life is the letter C between B and D, where B is birth, D is death, life C is choice. And even right now, these difficult times, they can distract us. These difficult times, they can diminish us, or these difficult times, they can develop us. But it's purely a choice, right? And so we make these decisions because our life is the sum total of all the choices that we've made up to this point. And sometimes, or a lot of times, there's benefits of choosing the hard thing, that having that difficult conversation or doing that workout. Because I think life is difficult for one of two reasons. Either you're leaving your comfort zone, life is difficult, or life could be very difficult if you stay in your comfort zone because there's no growth that's happening there. And the truth is that a lot of coaches don't want to talk about is that change can be scary. It's the unknown, right? Or growth could be hard to grow your business, to grow your brain, grow your body, grow your bank account. But nothing is as scary and hard as being stuck somewhere that you don't belong. And I just feel like your listeners are our listeners. They just, if they're attracted to the nature of our work, they're on this quest to reveal and realize more of their more of their potential, right? And sometimes Limitless is not about being perfect, but it really is about advancing and progressing beyond what you're either currently demonstrating or what you believe is possible in the first place. But doing those hard things, we know is going to make you more resilient. It'll make you stronger. So I think cognitive flexibility is this thing where in the moment you can navigate the storm, right? Like you have to be nimble, be able to navigate a storm. I think cognitive anti-fragility is you're stronger because you went through the storm and you have greater levels of strength and power because you went through that difficulty. And some things you can only learn in a storm. And some people would say maybe that their country isn't going through a storm or their work, there's some kind of storm. And so I think also some storms come because they clear our path. It gives us like a big reset. And it reminds us, what's important. And it reminds us that there is power in developing a mindset, a skill set, a tool set to be able to adapt and achieve things with greater ease and enjoyment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really positive way of thinking about adversity. I mean, sometimes the only way out is through, and usually challenge presents opportunities to learn, to adapt. I love the idea that you choose your hard. You can either choose to the difficult task of adhering to a resistance training exercise routine, especially if you're naive to exercise. I mean, that's hard, right? It can be hard to avert all of the ultra processed foods that lie in wait in the aisles of our supermarket, right? And eat a higher protein, begin to incrementally boost, for example, protein intake. If you prefer the taste of carbohydrates, I mean, who doesn't, right? But the hard that you're choosing there is you're choosing hard on the back end. You're choosing, the potential for chronic disease. You're choosing the potential for weight gain. You're choosing the potential for, not feeling your best, not looking your best. So you're always, every choice you make is you're making a choice basically with every behavior.
Being sick and tired is hard, and doing all those things to be healthy, it takes a level of discipline and effort, so it can be hard. Being broke is hard, and going out there and building something and earning something is hard, right? Relationships, I mean, every area of our life, but we always, it's not a new idea, but we choose those hards. It's just, I always say, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. So there's a mindset component to all this also as well, right? The difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, or the idea that, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl went through the most intense adversity, but the meaning that someone places on that, or Nelson Mandela in prison for all that time, didn't see it as a prison, saw it as preparation, right? We do an annual brain performance conference, which you've spoken at in the past. I remember, and we have one coming up also in December called Limitless Live, which we're so excited to have you back there. There's at the event you were at, we had the late Quincy Jones was in the audience, and we pulled him on stage, and I had this conversation. I was saying, everyone knows your successes, right? We Are the World and Thriller, and all the amazing accomplishments and Grammys. I want to know about your struggles. Like, what are some of the problems you're currently facing? And he's like, I don't have any problems. And I'm like, well, we all have problems. He's like, no, Jim, I don't have problems. I have puzzles. So that's a mindset shift, because he immediately, and if people saw the video of this, I got this aha, I got these goosebumps. I call them truth bumps, because I never saw problems the same way, because the neuro association I have towards puzzles is like, puzzles are fun, puzzles have a solution, it's kind of a game, and it's a challenge and something that I want to endure and solve, right? As opposed to problem. I mean, who wants to deal with problems? So there's a mindset shift. The difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset set, where like Carol Dweck's work out of Stanford, it's just like even with your brain, your mind, like your learning is not fixed like your shoe size. Your memory is not fixed like your shoe size. It can grow. Like I truly believe there's no such thing as a good or bad brain. There's a trained brain and an untrained brain. And I think, when I speak at the Cleveland Clinic or at Harvard, different places, or there's doing a lot of studies that approximately maybe like 1/3 is predetermined by genetics, biology, but 2/3 seem like it's in our control or influence, right? It's how we move our body, how we breathe, we're sleeping and managing stress and so on. But I want to remind, like every single day, we could do things that make us bitter, or we could do things that make us better, right? And so I think anti-fragility, when it comes cognitively, is doing hard things. Even something like the novelty of, I've taught for 30 years, like, hey, try doing this, brush your teeth with the opposite hand. And maybe it activates a different part of your brain, right? These cross laterals, where one half of your brain controls the opposite side of your body. Like, God forbid someone has a stroke on one side of their brain, then if there's paralysis, it would be on the opposite side, right? But there's not just a mind-body connection. There's certainly a body-mind connection, that using your body in certain ways could stimulate your brain in different ways, like dance, especially like children learning how to crawl. These cross laterals that cross the midline could stimulate your brain. So using your opposite hand, maybe it stimulates a different part of the brain. But what it really does for me is it forces you to focus. Because most people, when they brush their teeth, hopefully in the morning, they're usually doing something else, right? They're multitasking. And they wonder why they're distracted later. This idea of how you do anything is how you do everything. So if the first thing they do in the morning is pick up their phone, and they're doom scrolling, and they're context switching, they're driving their distraction muscles, their reactive muscles. When they get a bad message, puts them in a mood for hours. But even brushing your teeth, you have to focus on it with the opposite hand, because you're not good at it, right? So it's also good at doing new things, right? Making new circuits until it becomes habitual. But also, besides it maybe challenging a part of your brain and doing difficult things, it makes you present. It also is like a gateway habit. Wow, if I could learn how to do that, what other habits can I introduce? Duke University says about 40% of our daily behaviors are habitual. totally unconscious. And habits they serve a purpose, right? Because there's less cognitive load, less cognitive energy. You don't have to suffer from decision fatigue when things are habitual. It's just something that you do second nature. But when did we design those rituals and those routines and those habits? And are they serving us in terms of getting us close to what we want?
Yeah. No, I love the idea of tuning out distractions, or at least noticing the points in the day in which you tend to be the most distracted, and to bring at least a little bit of your focus back to the present moment, whether it's brushing your teeth or who knows.
Yeah. And we have that part of the brain called the reticular activating system, or it's kind of like a filter, because I think the brain is more of a, yes, it's a learning tool, but a device, but it's more of a deletion device. Because if you let everything in, I mean, there are a billion stimuli, like we would go insane and overload. So what we decide, so we're mostly filtering everything out. What we let in are things that are important to us. And that's why when we ask questions, then it's kind of shines a spotlight. Those people who are more curious, like when they're faced with something where somebody has a differing point of view, right? Asking questions like about how they would argue for that person, right? Creates a level of empathy, a level of curiosity. Is this true? How can I use this? And then you start, it's the whole idea where, they say that you buy a new car and then you start seeing that car everywhere.
Yeah.
Like where were those cars before? They didn't magically transform and just appear and teleport in your neighborhood. Like I remember years ago, my sister, this many years ago, would send me postcards and emails with a very specific kind of dog. It was like a pug dog. And I was like, why does she keep on, that my question was like, why does she keep on sending me? And she's a great marketer. She was seeding her birthday gift, right? But a funny thing happened, Max, when I go to places like Air Once, I'd be someone in front of me holding a pug dog at the cash register, right? Or I'd be running in my neighborhood and this guy was walking 6 pug dogs. But my question, everyone listening, was were the pug dogs just teleport in my neighborhood? No, they were always there, but I was deleting them because it wasn't important until I started asking the question. So the big question is like, what are the questions you're asking? Metacognition is thinking about your thinking, self-awareness to be able to make a change. What are the questions you're asking yourself on a regular? And by asking better questions, you could be more mentally resilient, right? Like, what does this mean? How is this serving me? Where's the gift in this? Like someone has sleep issues. Maybe they suffer from sleep apnea and they're getting a bad night's sleep. Like, where's the gift in that? Like, that's something I struggle with, obstructive sleep apnea. I try CPAPs and dental devices and other things where I stop breathing 300 times a night. I don't talk about this a lot publicly, but because of it, my energy is a little bit limited, my time. So where's the gift in it? Where I can become more anti-fragile is, number one, it forced me to do everything I teach, right? And that there's a level of congruency there where I could just roll out of bed at 2 a.m. and go into coaching mode because I'm just reporting and documenting what works for me. Because I think it's very important to practice what you post, right? And not everybody does that. And I think it's better well done than well said. So it forced me to get really good at the productivity, the learning, the communication, everything that we teach. But the other thing is it forced me, another gift that came out from having that sleep struggle was everything was heck yes or heck no, right? This hell yes, hell no. I'm always where I want to be, because when you feel like you have a limited amount of focus or energy or temperament, you're only going to do things that you want to do. Like that right now, there's nowhere else I'd rather be or with, because like when I agree to something, I'm like all in, because you don't overcommit when you have a limited amount of. So there was a gift, like my traumatic brain injury, losing my grandmother to Alzheimer's, the learning difficulties I had and growing up, called the boy with the broken brain, with that struggle led to strength, right? With that challenge came change. That's the post-traumatic growth, right? That's where it's not just resilience, where you could just tolerate it and get back to baseline. It's where it actually propelled you forward. Like I never read a book in school. It took me 3 years longer to learn how to read after my accident than the other kids. My teachers would have been surprised if I read a book, much less wrote books, right? And so that's where adversity can be a real advantage. Like, can you name one strong person that had an easy life, right? And so it's with that challenge that led to that immense amount of change. And I feel like that goes beyond just resilience. You become anti-fragile, where you actually, again, not only bounce back to baseline, bounce back, you bounce forward. And And I feel like how amazing is that to have that attribute of it where we could adapt to anything that we could be stronger than anything we face. And proof is, if anyone listening has ever thought that, wow, this is the worst it could ever be, I'll never survive that, but if they're listening, they did, right? And they could do it again. But there is a mindset shift there in terms of being curious or being empathetic, or we know that self-care is not just getting body work and, going out in nature. Self-care is also looking at the person in the mirror who's been through so much but is still standing. And there's not only grit of doing the hard things, but there's some level of grace.
You've already experienced the worst thing you've ever experienced.
And survived if they're still here. Yeah, and I just feel like what this offers people with this, when we're talking about even the different things like examples of neuroplasticity, right? Like some kind of cognitive stressor that forces you to grow, make new connections, the hormetic responses, the immune system, everything with that challenge, we just get better to a point, right? So how do you introduce daily like a little bit of a challenge in your life, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, and part of it also could be getting around people. Like we live in these echo chambers, right? Especially with algorithms that you tend to, you have a certain worldview, whatever you're engaging with and commenting and sharing, they give you more of. And this goes for negative stuff too. Like if I engage with and I really enjoy playing with your cat. If I engage with every cat video and post, then the algorithm is going to be more cats, and I'm going to think that's my reality. Well, your mind has a similar algorithm, right? Whatever you engage with, you're going to get more of. And so it's hard to create a positive life with a negative mind, right? And that's not just positive thinking. I mean, you want to be realistic also as well. But since everything is coming from those thoughts and those questions that we're asking, because that question determines our focus and that becomes our reality. Like it's like this idea where we have a dominant question. There's what we ask all the time. I'm curious what yours would be. And I wrote about this in Limitless, where I took a friend through a process of finding her dominant question, the question she asked more than any other question unconsciously, maybe hundreds of times consciously, thousands of times unconsciously. And it was, how do I get people to like me? And now you don't know anything about this woman, but you probably know a lot about her personality. Like if somebody is obsessed asking, how do I get people to like me? I mean, what would you say? What are some of the things that you would say about this person? What's her life like?
It probably had some trauma, had some rejection at really pivotal points in her life, had some, somebody wasn't around when they needed to be, thinking like a parental figure.
And then how does she interact currently with people? Like what's her personality like in the present? If someone is obsessed, like when they're with people, how do I get this person to like me?
Anxious. Like I'm thinking like anxious attachment style, I mean, attachment styles are, I think, used to describe typically like romantic relationships, but like somebody who's like anxiously social.
Yeah. And she's also, a people pleaser because she wants the person to like, and then her personality changes depending who she's with because she wants to be like that person, to be liked, and people take advantage of her. She becomes a martyr. And all these things about her personality, and one question that she asked herself. And so the question I have for everyone listening is, what's your dominant question? Like growing up, immigrated here, living in the back of a laundromat that my mom worked at, we didn't have the resources, my questions were different back then, like why us, right? And I would get these answers that weren't very useful. When I had my brain injury, I was like, why am I broken? Those answers weren't very useful. But then I said, like, well, how do I fix this? Then I started getting better answers. Then I said, like, how do I make this better? And then I started getting other answers. How can I teach this to others? I started getting other answers. It's just like this idea, a book, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And it's like, what if you had to reach your 10-year goal and you only had 6 months to do it? Would give you a different set of answers. And you could apply this towards mental resilience or cognitive, anti-fragility. It's just like, where's the gift in this? Getting curious. How is this serving me? How can I better endure this and enjoy the process? Then you're going to get different answers, which gives you a level of confidence to be able to go through that uncertainty. Or you're facing somebody who has a differing opinion, political or work, whatever, belief system. it doesn't always work where you just like, because we're in that, remember that algorithm where we tend to think everybody thinks this way, but to be able to like, hey, how can I defend that person's point of view? Not that you have, it's this whole idea where like strong convictions weakly held, right? Where how can you entertain two different opinions? And the challenge in society sometimes is when somebody has a different opinion, we see it as a threat. So our amygdala is kind of firing off. We see this as an unknown or a threat, and then we go into fight or flight, which also you're in your survival brain, which almost holds you hostage from your executive functioning, your problem solving, your ability to shift perspectives, your level of empathy, and then we become locked and rigid as opposed to cognitively flexible. I have a general belief, true or not, I choose to believe it, is that I could learn something from everybody, that everybody could be an example, or maybe even a warning that I don't want to be, and that nobody is 100% right, and also nobody is 100% wrong. Whether it's true or not, I just kind of choose to believe it, right? And a belief is only a thought that you repeat over and over again, right? Like even I have a belief that everybody has limitless potential, as a coach, whether it's true or not. But I rather err on somebody's power and their potential rather than, install more learned helplessness, because that's also part of the psychological trait or mindset of being anti-fragile. Right? Like learned helplessness is like, oh, I'm just stuck this way because of my age or because of my upbringing. And you're like that elephant that's at the circus, I'm not for this, that is stuck on that rope that's with a spike in the ground. And you wonder why I can't just pull down the whole tent because it's this huge, humongous, magnificent animal. But since it was born, it was tied to a similar rope around its neck to the ground, and it tried for couple days or a couple weeks, and it learned it was helpless. And then when it grew, and where are we helpless in terms of what we desire, what we deserve, or our memory, or our intelligence, or when things that are fixed. So I feel like there's definitely a mental component to be anti-fragile, where you decide what to focus on, you decide what things mean, because something can happen similar to two different people, and they could take it totally differently. Right, like the one, it's like this is the biggest tragedy ever. Well, what do we do? And the other one is like stepping up and, I am the storm. Right, like it's more of a set of attitudes and assumptions.
Well, what did you call it? The question that you ask yourself most?
Dominant question.
The dominant question.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, in part of it, you could find your dominant question sometimes under stress. Like, find yourself. What's your self-talk? Like when you're under, like where's your focus go? Or you could look at someone's results and what did it take for them to focus to do that, and what are the questions they're asking to get to kind of produce those kind of results. If somebody's out there and it's just funny all the time, they're probably asking them questions like, how can I make this humorous? How can I make this funny? How can I make people laugh? And they're getting answer. Like a Jerry Seinfeld, right? Like he's taking like mundane things and finds humor because he's asking those questions. What's funny about this? Where most people are probably asking that same question. So I'm curious, like, maybe you're not limited to one dominant question, but what do you think some of the dominant questions you have in your life that's determining your focus, which determines your behavior on a day-to-day?
How many grams of protein have I had so far? No, I wake up, once I get all my self-care stuff out of the way, my self-care ritual, which is like drinking coffee, eating something, maybe working out. The question I probably ask myself most is, how can I serve today? How can I serve the people that follow me, the people that listen to me? Attention is an incredibly valuable resource, and I'm super grateful for, obviously every single person who's taken a moment out of their day to listen to what I have to say. And so I want to make sure that I'm bringing value to the table.
And look, everyone who's listening, like anyone who follows you, listens, watch your videos on YouTube and everywhere else, read your books, like the life you live are the lessons you teach, and you're aligned with that. Your life is a reflection of how you serve. And so I feel like that's an example of how your dominant question shapes your life, because it shapes your focus, and that focus becomes reality. Other people thinking about, oh, why does this always happen to me, or how come I can't lose this weight, or whatever. They get certain answers, which aren't maybe the most empowering and useful answers. If you had to, Dr. Ben Hardy has a book called 10x is easier than 2x. The idea here is if you want to 2x something, you could just work hard, put more effort into something. But in order to 10x, you can't use effort to get to 10x. You have to ask certain different questions, get different answers, and open up other possibilities. And I feel like thinking is a big part of how we can become more mentally resilient, more mentally fit, more cognitively anti-fragile.
Now, do you think that we began the conversation talking about how to become anti-fragile in the face of the disruption wrought by AI to our industries, to our cognitive demands, but do you think AI can help facilitate, on the other hand, cognitive anti-fragility? Do you think we can use AI in a positive way to help support our cognitive abilities?
Yeah, it's interesting when I did the bonus chapter in Limitless Expanded, we have a whole chapter on AI, and the question I ask is, how do you use AI to enhance your HI, your human intelligence? I almost see it functionally as not artificial intelligence, more like augmented intelligence. It's more of an augmented, it's a partner, and so writing, it could be a great creative partner for somebody. A lot of people are using AI now as a form for coaching, to receive coaching or therapy, with mixed results, because AI is like everything is evolving. I feel like just like you have the dominant question about how do I serve, or for me, it's like, how do I make this better? Then those are the prompts you're putting into AI, right? If you ask better questions, you get better answers in AI. You also get that in life also as well. And so the ability to ask specific questions, to direct this, to be able to set context for the outcome. I feel like AI could be an enhancement, just like all technology could be used to make things better. But that's my dominant question, is how do I make things better?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think AI,
How are you using AI?
Well, I use it to facilitate my scientific literacy. I will basically, with science, sometimes you have what's called a journal club, where scientists, experts will get together and discuss a new study. You can literally download the PDF of a study, drop it right into ChatGPT, and you can basically talk to Chat about the study, which has been really helpful to me. I obviously, after writing 3 books and having published a chapter in an academic journal or textbook, I do obviously have a certain aptitude that I've achieved, but I'm an autodidact. I'm a self-learner. But having access to ChatGPT, which has a degree of scientific fluency, and being able to talk to it about science, it's just been absolutely incredible. I mean, who else ChatGPT is not free. It's like $20 a month, but I would basically have to there's nobody that would give me the kind of time, a working professional academic, nobody would give me the kind of time that Chat does. So it's helped my scientific literacy. It's helped my writing. It's helped my, creative output. Sometimes I will just feed it this really unwieldy thought or concept or idea. And just, even if it's wrong, just having it on paper, having it sort of non-judgmental feedback, spit back out at me. I mean, half the time it's just, garbage. But the other half of the time, it's like something that I can actually work with. And then I continue to prompt it and to finesse and to hone. And it's just...
And that's the human, that's the thing, because you have that discernment, you're upgrading your operating system. And so imagine, I think a lot of challenges that we face is because technology is increasing, which means there's more distraction, more information, right? More data, but we're not updating ourselves. We update our AI, our phone, we get the new phone, we update our apps. We're not upgrading the most important technology, which is our mind. And but imagine you could get the latest version, on the regular for your mind and your brain, if you will, and you get the patches and all the upgrades, and then just things are easier, right? And so I think a dominant question that would be useful to add for people is is this good for my brain? Is this bad for my brain? Is this something that I could use to become smarter, faster, better, and so on.
All right. Well, you are a brain health coach, performance expert. You've coached some of the top, most notable people in the world. I'm super excited for your event, the Limitless event.
Limitless
Live, which I'm going to be speaking at. I'm super excited for that.
A lot of your past guests also. Yeah, we have Dr. Mindy Peltz there. We have Dr. Gabby Lyon, and so many. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun.
Amazing. And remind my listeners the dates.
December 8, 9, 10.
Is there a website?
Limitlesslive.com. It's at this amazing 5-star resort in San Diego. And we have the creator of MacGyver coming to talk about how to solve problems when you have limited resources. Remember MacGyver, the show where he could solve, he has a paper clip and some duct tape, and he could stop make an airplane or something like that.
So cool.
Yeah, so he's going to go through his process. We have Diego talking about second brain. We have the author of The One Thing, Jay Papasan, for productivity performance, but it's going to be a blast. Limitlesslive.com. And
I can't wait.
The exhibits there will be amazing. We'll be doing workouts at 7 a.m. and meditate, just really fun stuff to get your brain alive.
And where again? It's in San Diego.
Yeah.
So cool. I've been to a handful of your events, and they're always you hit them out of the park.
They're
great.
This is going to be a fun one. People go to the site for more information. But I also believe in a world of AI and where we're mostly digital, bringing everyone together, deep immersion, no distractions, where it's about redrawing the borders and boundaries of what's possible. That limitations aren't real. We have the Guinness Book of World Records, fastest human calculator, who could calculate 4-digit numbers times 4-digit numbers faster than you could type it into a calculator. I mean, just people doing phenomenal things. We'll be talking about flow states, habit design, some amazing things. So, and there'll be some experiences there that you won't want to miss.
So cool.
Cold plunging and all the things we're talking about to become anti-fragile.
All right. Well, speaking of cold plunging, let's get actionable for a second.
Yeah,
what's one daily habit that you've adopted that has made the biggest difference in terms of your own cognitive antifragility?
So I would say the habit of micro discomfort, right? So low stake, consistent stressors on a day to day. And so cold was a big deal for me early on, because I grew up in the Northeast, and I really don't like the cold. I had met Wim Hof in 2013 speaking at an event in Boston, and so I've been doing some kind of cold exposure. Now I spend more time doing more saunas and heat, but that was tough, taking a cold shower, right? That's like a micro stressor, but the mindset part is when I'm doing it. There's the stressor itself. But then, what are you saying to yourself when you're going through it? Because if you're in there thinking this is torture, then that's a different mindset as opposed to how this is shaping me, making me stronger, and so on. And then the reflection point afterwards, I think more of us need to spend more time when we're going through difficult times, is the reflection, the meaning we put towards what we just experienced. It's often like the rehearsal part after you study something, doing that review. Or a lot of people study and learn something, take lots of notes, but they'll never review those, they never reflect on it, and they just move on to the next thing. So it never gets really encoded and consolidated into, new knowledge, new behaviors, and so on. But I think the habit of showing up for yourself is one of the most important things we could do, that what you're doing creates evidence that you are the person that you say you are, and that you can handle hard things, because there is an ego component here, right? Not wanting to look bad to others, or fear of failure, and so on. And I also feel like you have this identity of who you want to be, and you need behaviors like doing difficult things to say you are this strong person, or this genius, or this limitless leader, if you will. So cold is important. I write and read every single day, so I feel like that the more I study, even when I don't want to study, is when I really need to show up for myself. doing that difficult thing. Like sometimes I'm sleep deprived. I'm in 3 continents in 1 week. It's hard to get on stage in front of 3,000 people. But the act of showing up, having the cognitive flexibility to be able to adapt to new situations, but then also the cognitive anti-fragility, knowing that I built the strength going through it, that I show up because I have those muscles that were built. And the same thing with physical muscles. You can't, no matter how much money you have, you can't buy that, right? And I feel like when you show up, especially when you don't want to, doing the things that you say you're going to do for yourself, you create this meta identity where you are the person that you say you are, and you can do to handle difficult things. And that identity shapes everything, right? Because I feel like all the decisions we're making is to remain consistent with how we identify ourselves. If somebody thinks that I am a procrastinator, their behaviors are going to be in accordance with that. Or like me, growing up, when my teacher said, "That's the boy with the broken brain," I referred to myself as broken every single time I did badly in school or not picked for sports. That was my identity. But that label became my limit. And I feel like because of neuroplasticity, that we could wire our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, our actions, that we could design ourselves. Because I believe everyone listening that there's a version of yourself that's patiently waiting. So what's the goal? The goal is we show up every single day, even during difficult times, until we're introduced to that person. But when you fast forward and you do this time distortion into that version of yourself, like how are you making that person proud right now? Even this thought experiment, we envision ourselves in the future, some age and stage of life, that we want to be strong, right? We want to be capable, right? We want to be kind. What advice would that person give you today? What does that future version, ideal version of yourself, that limitless version of yourself, that genius, what advice would they give you today that we should be following, and let that be your guidepost, right? Like you get this question sometimes when you're in media, I got this podcast question, like, who do you want to make proud in your life? Because that's a big motivator for me. And honestly, it wasn't my kids, it wasn't family. It was, I want to make that 9-year-old boy that was labeled broken. I want to make him proud today. I also want to fast forward to when I'm in my 50s now, but when I'm 90, like, how do I make that guy proud? And I want to make my current person proud also. And even if we're all work in progress, and just reminding everybody that studies done in self-compassion show that kindness goes a long way. Self-kindness, that maybe you didn't follow through with that study or that workout or whatever, you think you beat yourself up and criticize yourself, saying, "Oh, you're more likely to follow through," which is not the case. Like when you say, like, "Hey, I am human. These things came up, but I'll be better tomorrow," you're more likely to follow through tomorrow. So I would say the meta habit of showing up for yourself will determine like how we see ourselves and perceive ourselves. And I don't know, like, will be more important than that. And I think the idea that we inspire people with our grit and our grace, like even the people listening, like people are like, "Why you always listen to podcasts?" They might be hearing this, or "Why are you always going to events or reading those books or whatever," and the people closest to us, because that's part of it also. The people around us shape how we see ourselves. We have these mirror neurons. We're constantly like imitating people around us. And what do we imitate? Like WATCH, you want to watch, we imitate their words. We use the same language of the people we spend most time with. Actions, the A in watch. We tend to model the behaviors of the people. Thoughts, we tend to think the same way about things and situations or positive, whatever, who we're spending the most time with. The C is character. We tend to have the same kind of moral compass or integrity as the people around us. And then the H in watch are habits. This whole idea that first you create your habits, then your habits create you back. Like if your friends, all your friends smoke, you're more likely to smoke. But if all your friends work out, you're going to spend time more working out. Eat a certain way, you're more likely to eat, that way also. And so that community is very important. But in terms of cognitive anti-fragility, it's nice also to get around people that see things different. That, like what if once a month you had dinner with people that, and it doesn't have to be opposing views, it could just be also different people who are just outside of your normal sphere that have different life experience, could offer different perspectives and points of view. At that event, that I mentioned with that you were speaking at with Quincy Jones, the other thing he said to me is you have to go to know. That when he travels and he has this deep appreciation for different cultures in terms of the food, the art, the language, especially the music. He actually speaks like 23 different languages. We're going to talk about language learning at this event also as well. And he's like, when you go, you get to know, because what does it do? It changes the place and the people you're spending time with. And so how can we do that locally? How can we get out of our echo chamber and spend time with people with different points of view to challenge our perceptions, just like we would challenge our body, with some kind of stressor. If you're in a hyperbaric chamber or you're exercising water, how do you change the environment? Because the external environment tends to influence our internal environment. And so going back to that T as a generalist, the top of the T going left to right, and also the depth, of the knowledge, the specialty, I feel like you could really increase your level when you can learn how to learn. Then you can learn a broad-based amount of information, which makes you valuable in situations because it gives you perspective, and depth makes you valuable, right? Like you're really good at it, whether it's AI or health optimization or communication or sales. And then you also have generalists where you could pull on different things and be broadly known, and which also shapes your decisions, because you can only make decisions and choices based on the information you know at any given time. So and those micro discomforts I'm talking about, you could start with temperature. You could be reading 30 minutes a day, which can be difficult for some people. Some people it's doing, HIIT training, right? Or something that's difficult. But challenge ourselves, because again, things are difficult for one of two reasons. You leave your comfort zone or you stay in your comfort zone. And I would always choose to a point where you're bending, but you're not breaking, right? That wouldn't be a...
Yeah, I think it all comes down to making a commitment to yourself. Pick your hard, make a commitment to yourself, and then honor that commitment.
Yeah, and even like when we're going back to AI, it's even more important than ever, because I don't think AI is going to replace the people. What it's going to do is replace the version of yourself that's not willing to change and adapt, right? If you're changing and constantly adapting and updating your own operating system, then AI becomes an incredible tool for us to use, right? And then once you use it for your means, then you could going into human strengths, in terms of pattern recognition, in terms of divergent thinking, in terms of problem solving, in terms of creativity, in terms of communication, in terms of empathy. And those are superpowers. Again, a lot of those aren't taught in school, unfortunately. Not a lot of social learning or emotional learning and focus. But I think the most important thing is in DeepMind, again, Google AI, this Nobel laureate said, in the world of AI, the most critical skill is learning how to learn, this area of learning how to learn. And especially with AI, because you want to be stronger and less fragile, because there's more information, right? There's more distractions. And the amount of information, some people say the amount of information in the world is now doubling every 12 hours.
It's crazy.
Because of technology. But how we learn it and observe it, think about it, is the same. So that growing gap creates a lot of health issues with information overload.
Yeah, we have the same
anxiety.
Brains that evolved on the savannah, that are programmed to see the world locally, to learn linearly, and we live in this exponential world where it's just it's crazy what we've inherited, and it's only getting crazier.
And I also believe that the new frontier, while people go out to outer space, I'm really interested in this inner space. And for those listening, I'm pointing to my brain, the technology that's out there. I'm thinking about this technology. And I truly believe, in my experience of 34 years, especially with individuals and Olympic athletes or chess masters or polymaths, that we're grossly underestimating. And the reason we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities, that we could be more, do more, have more, and share more. And what does it require? It requires us to put in that effort and challenge ourselves. And with that challenge comes real change and strength. And then you just show up different, right? Somebody who's physically fit, as opposed to somebody who's not, they could take on a physical challenge like climbing, hiking up, running a canyon in a way that has ease, that's enjoyable, but somebody who's not trained or fit, it's going to be that same stimulus, right? That same challenge is going to be a totally different experience.
It's gonna suck.
Yeah. And so what about mental fitness, right? Cognitive fitness, cognitive antifragility, where you could kind of do that because you've done the work. And so what's harder for everybody around you becomes easy and enjoyable because you have the technique and you have the training and you have the fitness and strength that a lot of people take, that we should never take for granted, right? And so I'm excited for the times that we're going. I'm excited about the possibilities. This event, Limitless Lives, is about freeing your mind, and we've set up a number of experiences. We're going to show people really what's humanly possible.
Hell yeah! I can't wait, brother. Well, thanks as always for coming in. I mean, I predicted that we were going to start talking about AI, and then you were going to download all kinds of really valuable life lessons for us. So thank you for doing that. And just remind my listeners where they can, I'm sure many of them already do follow you, but where they can find you on social media, how they can download your, subscribe to your podcast, get your book, etc.
So we're at, everything's at Jim Kwik, Kwik, my real last name. Didn't change, it's not my stage name. I would challenge everybody to do one thing, take a screenshot wherever you're consuming this and tag Max, tag myself, and share one thing you're going to do to challenge yourself, to be more anti-fragile. And if you tag us, we get to see us. I'll repost some of my favorites, and we'll actually gift a few signed copies of Limitless, as a thank you for people randomly to just do that. And we have our podcast. You can just search my name anywhere. Where you listen to podcasts, you join us on YouTube, where we put our extended version of. You've been on our show numerous times. We're there at. You can join. We have like 1.8 million subscribers there, and join us live. And we put together the Justice League, the Avengers, if you will, a performance for those 3 days. And you'll come there and you'll be more limitless and win more and be unstoppable in 2026.
Hell yeah, and I'll be there. You'll get to meet me. It's gonna be fun.
We'll do book signings with the speakers. We have a lot of major surprises. So thank you, buddy.
Of course. All right, Jim Kwik, you're the man. Thanks for coming out. Thank you guys all for listening. I love you all. Appreciate you. And I will catch you on the next episode. Peace, everybody. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.